What's up, y'all? I'm Bud Elliott, and this is another edition of the Nolecast. Unfortunately, yet another game where we do not have a Winston reaction, so we don't have an instant reaction. I'm not just going to jump on here to rant about a loss when it's just kind of second verse, second verse same as the first. But I do have a couple game takes that I wanted to get off. I have some thoughts about Mike Norvell's most recent press conference, maybe some things that are going on behind the scenes in the program that I think people might be interested in, to the extent that I can share those without betraying confidence of, people who have come to trust me over the years. So we will talk about all that and more, take some Patreon questions tonight. Really appreciate everybody tuning in and checking this out. You guys have been telling me you like some of the shorter episodes, a little bit less rambling. So I will try to just say the damn thing and get on. And that's fine. Uh, if you guys know other potential like occasional co-hosts you want me to work with, let me know. I am actively in the process of kind of feeling that out. Probably not going to add it before the season's done. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this thing. So this is kind of the loss that in some ways bothers me the most. And I say in some ways because I feel like every loss bothers you like a little bit in different ways. But this one does bother me a pretty good bit. And it's because Carolina is a team that they're very up and down. They do have some good players, as we discussed in the preview podcast. And they have the ability to play you and to beat you. And if you don't play well, to just kind of snowball you, right? And just get that thing rolling. And they're very much kind of a momentum team. But like Jacoby Criswell is not a stud quarterback. He's like a somewhat below average, I guess, ACC quarterback. And yeah, the receivers are okay, but for the most part, they're just decent. Now, Hampton's a hell of a good back. There's no doubt about that. But this is the loss that felt like the most kind of discombobulated. I don't want to use like the across the board quit word because I don't think that's really appropriate because the whole team didn't quit, but I definitely think you see some guys. There's some jogging going on. There's some guys who I think maybe if they haven't physically quit, and that's really not a safe thing to do on a football field, maybe they've mentally quit. Checking out in terms of how much prep they really put in for the week. What is their communication like? How well are they working, with their teammates? Are their minds elsewhere? I think it's very possible that in some cases, some of these guys probably are checked out on the season. Hell, I am a little bit. I think everybody who covers this team is. I guarantee you a lot of this coaching staff is, not completely checked out, but I know some of them are probably thinking about what they're going to be doing next year because it won't be in Tallahassee. And that's not smack talking or wishing ill will on anybody. It's just basically the case. And so I was concerned here. I did not think this would be a blowout of this much. I thought FSU would lose the game, but I thought it would be kind of like a more of a slugfest, maybe limit some of the explosive plays. And yet that really didn't work super well. And of course, the reasons are fairly obvious. But when Carolina is ripping off a 43% rushing success rate, and you have the back who is that damn good in Hampton, and you allow passing plays of 24, 38, and 49, but then runs just repeatedly, just 10-yard runs nonstop in 15, 18, 12, 18, 31, 43, 13, 12, and 16. I mean, Hampton just killed you. I mean, he's a good player, but some of the tackling by some of these FSU players to me looked like they were making business decisions. And if I am the guy in charge of making the business decisions for Florida State football, and that's Mike Norvell, I think I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about trusting those guys again going into next year. And I'm concerned about trusting the coaches who tolerate that going into next year. And I know some people say, oh, if a team quits once, it'll quit again. I don't know if I truly believe that or not, actually. I think that you've seen teams give poor effort before and then bounce back just fine. I am not expecting a bounce back from this team in this season for some reasons that I think we'll get into briefly, but I am concerned, obviously. I think this is one people last week were like, how can you not be concerned about losses? I'm like, of course I'm concerned, but like, I'm not really expecting anything totally different. I did not expect you to get housed by North Carolina in Tallahassee, and UNC's played better, but like, they're not I don't think the rosters are necessarily 24 points better, but the rosters plus the buy-in plus the coaching plus where you are in the developmental cycle and of like the hype cycle and expectation cycle, that's kind of how you get to that. Of course, did you force any turnovers? No. Did you allow two? Yeah, unfortunately, you did. So defensively, pretty disappointing the tackling of some of the guys in the secondary corners, safeties. Just they're in large part, I think, to blame for some of that. Backers were a bit up and down. I still think you're getting pretty good effort out of Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson, which those are guys who they better, right? Like they need to go to the league and go get paid. So uh, you know, we'll see. Um, so that's kind of where I am with this game. Now, offensively, I saw a couple things I liked, but it's so hard because these receivers are just they're not it. The pass protection is just I don't know what you do with that. You get you get 7 sacks and 25 dropbacks. Like that's incredible. That is basically record setting. I don't know how you really evaluate what you have with these quarterbacks. Personally, you're going to evaluate some stuff. Like if you're Tony, you sit down with these guys. Okay, did they make the right read? Did they make the right pre-snap check? That type of stuff you can kind of evaluate. But they're really running for their life more often than not. You're basically just out of players on the offensive line, which sucks. But it's not the NFL. You can't go pluck a guy off the practice squad, and you do see some teams that just completely you lose a guy or two and you kind of fall apart. And that's not me saying that the guys they had in there to start the year were playing well, because you know what? They weren't. They did not have the right combo of the right guys this year. Some of your more veteran guys actually regressed a little bit this year. Murray Smith, Washington, maybe more injury related with Washington, but still. But you see it elsewhere. Like look at Pitt, right? Pitt was having an undefeated season. They lose their left tackle against Syracuse. They go down and play SMU. The backup, he just can't play a lick. He gets destroyed. He has a 28 PFF grade. 28. Like that's crazy to me. Um, so they lose big time. Injuries are not the main reason for this season. They are absolutely a kind of a factor that is compounding on the efforts of this FSU football team. If you want to tell yourself that this will be better next year, and maybe it will be, I think the overwhelming odds there are that it will be better. How much better is a good question to ask, and we will ask that on this show. But if you want to tell yourself that this team will be better next year, a good part is just stay healthier and turnovers. Probably gets you 3 to 4 more wins than you have right now. This is the first game where I thought you really got blown out, though, by a team that should not be blowing you out. Like Miami's players look different than yours. They look bigger, faster, stronger. Well, at least the guys who were out there with the injury stuff. Maybe some of your guys on the bench are a little different. So this is really concerning. Offensively, I mean, Glenn 6 of 11 for a buck 23. Luke struggled, but he's a true freshman. With that amount of pressure going on, I wouldn't be totally shocked to see anybody struggle. The run game, 28 for 42, couldn't really get much going. Part of that is clearly sacks, right? You had 45 yards in lost sack yardage, but Toa Philly 8 for 24. Keziah Holmes 4 for 19. You did hit some explosive plays though with the receivers, and that was something I think is really encouraging to see. If you have any shot of beating Florida, you're going to have to try to do a lot more of that in 3 weeks in Tallahassee. Not that I think they're going to beat Florida at this point, because I think they're in some ways just kind of playing out the string. Like, I don't know if you guys watch Cover 3, but Chip, who's a big, he's a UNC guy, he's like, yeah, they're kind of on that quit watch. I'm like, I don't know if we need to watch to see if they quit anymore. I think there's some guys in this team who are pretty done. One thing that is not done is the awesome team with Legendary. Chad just keeps rolling along, 600 plus Nolecast loans. I mean, how do you not go with them, right? 844 FSU loan, 844 FSU loan. Chad does a great job with the personal service touch for you, knowledge of the market, busting his butt for you. A lot of specials out there as well. If you give him a call, 844 FSU loan, 844 FSU loan, or click the link in our show notes. I've done it twice. Very strong personal recommendation for me to use the Legendary team. All right, so let's get into this more. Hampton crushed. UNC's pass rush was very good. I'm actually totally fine with rotating the quarterbacks. whatever. You can't really get outgained by 300 yards in your own backyard. That's concerning. I will say this: I thought Mike Norvell's press conference today was interesting, and he really can't say anything more than he's saying right now. Like he's kind of walking up to the line, and if you want to read between the lines even a little bit, I think he's very clearly saying like there's going to be big changes coming to this program. He continues to say, "Hey, it's on me." Which, if you make $9 million a year, of course, yeah, it's absolutely on you. You are the head man, right? So he's not incorrect, but he's probably not going to fire himself. So there will be other guys who get fired. There will be some players who get fired as well, I think, right? And try to get the right mix of people in to this program. And I think they know what that looks like, but they didn't know what it doesn't look like, I guess, this year is what you could say. You think about some of the leadership that they lost from last year's football team. And this year, I just don't think you have that same level of leader. That's something we kind of got a little bit crapped on, or honestly, for saying in the offseason. It's like, yeah, I mean, some of these guys are just not the dudes that you think are good leaders, but they are your best players. So you got to pay them because you don't recruit well enough to tell a really talented guy, hey, you got to go elsewhere. So we'll see if they can get this right next year. I don't know that they can, but I do know that they will try. I don't expect Mike Norvell to be fired absent something that's just that would pretty much shock me. He can't say more than he is right now. I think if you're sitting there wishing for him to say even more, just it's not really going to happen, guys. That's not how things work. It would be pretty unprofessional, I think, to throw your coaches under the bus at this time of the year. Even when you do fire somebody, like it's almost always, hey man, really appreciate the contributions to the program. We wish the guy well, no love, et cetera, et cetera. And to my knowledge, I think he's only fired one coach in his tenure, and that was the receivers coach at Memphis. I want to say receivers coach. I actually was talking to somebody about this a couple weeks ago who would know. Um, And yeah, you could say Marv was going to get pink slipped potentially if he didn't get promoted away by the Hokies, or maybe Woodson with Arkansas. I think that's probably fair that some moves would have eventually been made there. But in terms of guys who didn't find the soft landing spots and just said, "No, like it's done. You got to make a change here." I'm pretty sure it's just one time. So making 4 or 5 changes for Mike Norvell will be a big change for him. There's no doubt. So I'm curious to see like how he handles that, how it goes. I think if you think like, what do they need to do um, right now? I don't know, but I do know in terms of like changes you can make right now. Can you really like expect him to make big time changes in the middle of the season? No, we talked about this last episode. This keeps coming up, so I keep addressing it. But no, like you're not going to fire your entire staff during the middle of the season. You still got a couple games to coach. There's like that's the job. You're in coaching season now. Behind the scenes, you are actively in gather information season, maybe back channeling some guys who have made it known that they are interested in jobs. Are you going to get really good players, really good coaches to come in? I don't know. Like, if you're a coach, are you going to move your family to come coach on a staff that you might think, oh man, that's a hot seat staff? If you're a player, are you going to come in? And if you're a really, really good player with options, you're going to come in and do that? I don't know. Maybe you will, but I guess I would be a little bit surprised if they absolutely crush it in the portal this year and if they absolutely crush it with the coaching hires. But money does fix a lot of things. They clearly have a large NIL budget, and they obviously have a very nice staff salary pool. And in some ways, I think they operate as like too big to fail. So they'll find the money to make sure that things keep rolling. But I won't lie to you and tell you that I know things are going to work out when I don't. I don't know that they will work out. I think they'll be better. It would be basically impossible not to be better. But I'd be very surprised if they got like really really good players out of this, or really really good coaches in terms of like every single one. Maybe you get a stud or two who believes that Norvell's not going to get fired. Who wants to come and make a name for himself in a new role, recruit the state of Florida, et cetera. Like all that stuff's very very doable. But I don't know that it's going to just be a home run effort. To be honest, how could you sit here and guarantee your audience that it will be? I'm very skeptical of that. One thing I'm not skeptical of, though, is the awesome team at Congruity, congruityhr.com/Knowles, congruityhr.com/Knowles. Matt Lewis will take care of you. HR, payroll, whatever kind of business solutions you need, Congruity is the number to call. Hit up Congruity, link in the show notes. Matt Lewis will take care of you. We appreciate him taking care of us on the Nolecast. So a lot of questions about that. Like, who are they going to go get? I don't know. Are they going to get any transfer portal players? Yeah, they'll probably get a ton of them. How many will be good? I mean, some, right? Like, you got money, you got a popular jersey, you have very recent success with the transfer portal. Are you going to beat out certain teams for those stud guys? Probably not, because they're also going to want to win. And you messed up this year bad enough to where it probably has some long term ramifications in terms of your ability to gather talent. But I do think you need to work behind the scenes right now to do a couple things. One, you need to identify what changes you can make in your own process if you're Mike Norvell. And culture's cool, and they wanted to value culture this year. They wanted to value continuity, and indeed they did value all those things. But also talent really matters, and you've got to get talent into the program. Football's a height, weight, speed game. Coaching matters, but just not as much as talent. Talent matters more than coaching in college football. Players matter more than coaches. I think Norvell has to embrace that and say, hey, look, I saw the difference between my players and Georgia's players. On that same field, 9 months later, I saw the difference between Miami's players and my players. I have to get better players, and I have to coach them better. And we have to realize, like, chemistry and continuity, that you can't win without them, but you're not winning because of them if you lack in other areas. So those are important things to consider going forward if you're Norvell. Thinking about what your process looks like. What kind of standard do you hold your assistant coaches to, both the current assistant coaches and the assistant coaches, who may be coming in? What does that look like? How does the distribution of kind of like your work day, how does that change if it needs to for Norvell, but also for everybody else on staff? Maybe it's a little less this and a little more recruiting. Uh, Again, that's kind of a long-term plan, though. Like, they're not going to high school recruit their way out of the situation in 1 year. You got to be willing to be patient. You got to be willing to understand that's probably more of a long game. So you're going to have to kind of fly dual tracks here. And you're going to have to do a nice enough job in the portal to where you're at least competent, to where you are returning to a bowl game comfortably, to where you are, maybe if you get a little bit lucky, you are in the mix to play for the ACC title next year. Win it, I don't know. I'm not really sure what that looks like. I need to probably think about what everybody else has coming back. But there's been plenty of these ACC games this year in which you've been in, at least from a physical standpoint, for quite some time. It's also really hard right now. People are like, oh, make this change, make that change. I just can't imagine that everybody's pulling in the same direction. You got guys who certainly know they won't be on this staff this year or next year. Does that mean that they have already been informed of such? I kind of doubt that. But do they have enough common sense? Yeah. Do they have an agent saying, hey, dude, you're probably going to get let go? We need to start thinking about, like, guys we can call who you know, guys who you coached for, guys who you coached with, any area in the country you do want to live, don't want to live. We're going to list the house, like all that kind of stuff. Those are like just regular life stuff that impact people's work. And when it's this bad, a lot of people are going to put me before we, and I don't blame them for doing so. That's just kind of what happens when things all fall apart around you at times. So Norvell needs to be working behind the scenes to go after top recruiters. Needs to look at his process and see what needs to be changed there. But yet you realize, like, during the season, not a whole lot can happen. We're just kind of playing out the string here. You got you got Notre Dame on deck, and of course Riley Leonard is playing extremely well for the Irish right now, the quarterback. So that's not great at all. But it's the hand that you're dealing with. Something we always love dealing with is Charlie Park Restaurant. Charlie Park Rooftop is the place to go in Tallahassee. Drinks, brunch, date night. You want to host a special event, special occasion. Maybe you got a son or daughter graduating in December. Call them up. Hit them up. Link in the show notes as well. Charlie Park, Matt Thompson, and the For the Table Restaurant Group do a great job supporting the Nolecast, and also do a great job supporting all of their customers. So I want to talk about a couple more things here before we go. One is that it's probably better, probably to have a record that kind of leaves no doubt, if you will. It makes it really tough to make changes if you're like, okay, we're surviving, we're getting by. But if you want to make real change, you probably need to have some of that desperation. You need to have something that kind of a blinding flash to the obvious, if you will. It's a phrase I'm stealing from my dad. If he's listening, maybe he stole it from somewhere else. I don't know, but it's a good one. Having one win at this point in the season, that's kind of a blinding flash to the obvious. Okay, something's really broken here. Got to make some real changes. We will see what those changes will be, but in some ways, it being this bad is kind of good. Now, that would not include losing to like Charleston Southern. Obviously, you don't want to lose at home to Florida. You're probably going to lose to the Irish, et cetera. But in some ways, forcing it to be this bad is kind of what you're dealing with. And I think that may actually help, as opposed to like, what if you got better bounces? What if you got like neutral turnover luck and this team was 6-6 as opposed to what it is, which is probably going to be what, 2-10? Do you make the same changes that you're about to make? I don't know. Would you need to make the same changes that you're about to make? Again, I'm not entirely sure on that. Okay. Let me see. Other things from the game. Teams continue to scheme up FSU, defensively pretty well and execute with confidence. They know largely what they're going to get. I think they can run whatever the hell they want to on defense now for the most part and know they're going to get home with how just discombobulated and also banged up the offensive line is. So that continues to be a bit of a problem there. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to just fake this, right? It's 25, 28 minutes, whatever we did tonight on this. I'll see you with the Irish preview. May have a guest on for that. I got a couple friends who are in Notre Dame media, so we'll kind of check in on them. Maybe on their playoff hopes. Maybe you guys can adopt a team for the playoff run. Who the hell knows? I appreciate it, and this has been the Nolecast.